Bitcoin has already fallen a long way from its record high, but what if the biggest part of the correction hasn't happened yet? Many investors are looking at the recent rebound and wondering whether the bottom is finally in. History, however, tells a different story. One long-term chart pattern suggests Bitcoin could still revisit the $30,000 area before this cycle is truly over. Let's take a closer look. Bitcoin has already corrected, but is it enough? Bitcoin reached its latest all-time high of around $126,000 in October 2025. Since then, the market has struggled to regain that momentum. The price eventually dropped as low as $57,000 before recovering, and Bitcoin now trades at around $65,000. That rebound has given many investors hope that the worst is over. One thing many newer investors forget is that Bitcoin has always gone through painful corrections, even during bull markets. Previous cycles included several sharp pullbacks before the market eventually recovered and moved to new highs. That raises an interesting question. Could this recent recovery simply be another temporary bounce? Bitcoin has repeated the same pattern. Since 2019, one of the most interesting long-term patterns on Bitcoin's chart goes all the way back to 2019. Since then, Bitcoin has repeatedly bounced from a rising ascending trend line. You can almost think of it as the market's long-term reset level. The pattern first appeared in January 2019, following Bitcoin's collapse after the December 2017 all-time high of around $20,000. That bounce marked the beginning of a new recovery. The next major test came during the March 2020 market crash. Bitcoin once again found support on that same trend line before starting the rally that eventually pushed the price to nearly $69,000 in November 2021. The pattern repeated after the 2021 bull market. Bitcoin returned to that ascending trend line in December 2022. That bounce became the foundation for the rally that eventually carried Bitcoin to its latest all-time high of around $126,000. Three major tests, three major recoveries. Now the question is, could Bitcoin price drop to around $30,000? Today, Bitcoin trades at around $65,000, which is roughly 48% below its all-time high. Looking at that same long-term structure, the price is once again sitting somewhere between the previous peak and that ascending trend line. If history repeats one more time and Bitcoin returns to that support before beginning another major rally, the trend line would intersect around $30,000. That doesn't mean Bitcoin is guaranteed to fall there. It simply means the long-term pattern still leaves room for that possibility. Trend lines are not magical lines that control price. They simply highlight areas where buyers have repeatedly stepped in over many years. Every previous visit to this trend line eventually led to a new all-time high. This cycle is not exactly the same as previous ones. Spot Bitcoin ETFs have brought institutional money into the market. Large companies continue holding Bitcoin on their balance sheets, and adoption is much broader than it was just a few years ago. Those factors could prevent Bitcoin from revisiting such low levels. Even so, chart patterns often reflect investor psychology. Fear, greed, profit-taking, and accumulation have shaped every Bitcoin cycle so far, and those emotions remain part of the market regardless of how much institutional money enters. Personally, I wouldn't say Bitcoin is definitely going to $30,000. That would be far too certain. What I do take from this chart is something much simpler. I wouldn't feel completely confident that the final bottom is in unless Bitcoin either bounces from that long-term ascending trend line or clearly invalidates the pattern altogether. Until then, the possibility of one more major dip remains very much alive. The real question is this: has institutional adoption permanently changed Bitcoin's market structure? Or will history repeat one more time before the next bull run begins? Let me know what you think in the comments.